Hi, welcome to Barb's Kitchen Center. My name is Celeste and this is my test kitchen. As many of you who grew up in Alberta may know, Jean Pear from the company's Coming cookbook series passed away in December. So today our recipe is going to be out of her first book, 150 delicious squares, and indeed most of them are. We're going to make nanaimo bars. If you don't know who Jean Pear is, if you're not from Alberta and you didn't grow up in the 80s, then please look her up. She did a whole series of wonderful cookbooks, and if you graduated, got married, had a special birthday from 1981 till last week, you probably have a Company's Coming cookbook in your cupboard, and if not, she has some wonderful recipes, and nanaimo bars is one of them. Nanaimo bars is actually from the town of Nanaimo, BC, and it is indeed a bar. It is quite lovely and quite sweet, and you can rarely find it outside of Western Canada, although its popularity is sort of heading east. And I do know I have shared the recipe with one or two American relatives who think it is the most wonderful thing in the world. So it's made in 3 layers, and in Jean's recipe there's an egg in the base. I don't include the egg in the base because I don't like to have to bake it, and I don't want any raw egg in my base. So you can put it in if you want, you could leave it out if you want. It really will make no difference to the base of your cake. It's generally made in a 9x11 pan or a 9x9 or an 8x8. Today I'm going to do it in a springform pan, just to make it round and kind of cool and funky. And I am going to veg lean my pan, even though it says use an ungreased pan, simply because it has a waffle bottom. And it's way easier to peel off if I have sprayed the bottom. I could use parchment paper, but before we started shooting I didn't cut a parchment round, so I'm just going to spray the pan. Alright, so the first thing I need to do is put in the first 3 ingredients, which are graham wafer crumbs, 1 3/4 cups, which I diligently measured before we started this. It calls for 5 tablespoons of cocoa powder. Because this can be a really, really sweet bar, I use 3 tablespoons of cocoa powder and 2 tablespoons of espresso powder, because the espresso coffee flavor really cuts through that sweetness, but it doesn't taste super coffee-y. It just offers some respite from that sweet, sweet, sweet. And we also need the granulated sugar, which is just 1/4 cup. Again, it's an ingredient you can omit if you choose, because it's already going to be a really sweet bar, and you'll see that once we get to the middle of it. I'll just mix it all up. Then it is a 1/2 cup of crushed nuts. I'm using walnuts today. I've used pistachios, I've used cashews. Technically and traditionally it is walnuts, but you know, if you want to go out there and do your own riff, go ahead. And then a 1/2 cup of coconut. And I'll get all the lumps out of the coconut so you don't get one coconutty bite. And it is kind of mixed through and through. And then, like any traditional crust of this type, butter. And because I'm not using the egg, I have put in probably an extra tablespoon to 2 tablespoons of butter. And I'm using an unsalted butter. You can use a salted butter. It will make no difference. It just adds a little more salt, and you know, now that, as my doctor informed me, I'm not 20 anymore, I need to start watching these things, so I have chosen to use unsalted butter. And I did once take a cooking class where they informed me that you can never put as much salt on your food as they use to salt the butter, because and if you have ever wondered why unsalted butter is more expensive than salted butter, because salted butter has the extra ingredient, it takes longer and is harder to make unsalted butter because the salt is used to take the moisture out of the butter. So that mystery is solved. Alright, so this is the base. It just goes into the bottom of your pan. And then, for those of you who are like me and don't like getting your hands dirty, this will not be your favorite part. I know it is my least favorite part. You just press it down, compress it into the bottom of the pan. When I lived at home and I had a father who thought the sun rose and set on my feet, he actually made me a board that I could put wax paper on the other side of, and I could press it in and I would never have to touch the greasy stuff. And Tony's looking at me and I can just see the big princess sign flashing over his head. It's okay. Even if you're a little bit of a princess, I will still be your friend. All right, so it is kind of greasy. I probably could have put in some more graham cracker crumbs. I could have put in, more coconut. It's fine. You chill this. Nobody will know at the end of the day. So into the fridge this will go, and then we'll start preparing our middle layer. Okay, with the base chilling in the fridge, we're now ready to make our middle layer. I find making the middle layer in a mixer a whole lot easier than trying to mix everything together by hand. So I've got my whips on my bowl, and I like a double stuffed Nanaimo bar because nobody wants a skinny Nanaimo bar. If you're going to eat a Nanaimo bar, you might as well go for it. So instead of the half cup of butter, I'm using an entire cup of butter. So I'm going to start creaming my butter. To that, I'm going to add milk, vanilla custard powder, and icing sugar. And we'll print the recipe underneath so that you can get the proportions. Creaming the butter. And then we need 5 tablespoons of milk. 6 tablespoons. I'm short one. Hang on. 5 and... I thought 5 was an odd number for something doubled. 4 tablespoons of vanilla powder. You probably saw this, it's the Bird's custard powder you can get in the grocery store, or we actually have it here in the store. Little clouds of custard powder. And 4. Then we need our friend confectioner sugar, because, icing sugar makes everything better. And I will get 2 cups of icing sugar. So when you're measuring dry ingredients, you want an accurate measurement. You should measure into the cup that you're using as opposed to compressing all of the ingredients. There's 1. Two. And you're looking for this middle layer to be stiff like butter. 3. And I mean butter like on the counter butter, not soft butter. It has to be able to stand up or it kind of runs out and is not good. nothing like a fine dusting of icing sugar to make you just a little bit sweeter every day. It does have vanilla custard in it. I do like to put a little bit of extra vanilla flavor in it, and that's just a personal preference. It's not actually part of the recipe. And I will just scrape it down to make sure we have all of that icing sugar off the sides and the bottoms. And does look, so it's very stiff. It's not runny at all. And then when I, of course, chill this again, it's going to get even stiffer. And this is the consistency you're looking for. You don't want it to be runny. You want it to be nice and stiff. All right. So tempting to lick the spoon, but I won't. All right, I'll get my middle out of the fridge. So, and it's firmed up significantly. Again, with the egg, you would bake this, and it would be too hot to do this too right now. Without the egg, as long as it's gotten firm, you're good. All right, get my spatula. There we go. And then you just spread this all over your base. So I have a staff whose favorite thing in the world is nanaimo bar, and every year for her birthday, I make it in this round, and that is her birthday cake. I had a brother whose favorite thing was apple pie, so every year for his birthday cake was an apple pie. I had another brother whose favorite was Rice Krispie squares, so every year his birthday cake was Rice Krispie squares. My mother found it incredibly weird and hard to deal with because she was very much a traditionalist, but you know, we all got what we wanted. I was just solidly a chocolate cake girl, so the only fight I had with my mother over birthday cakes was at the time when I was growing up, everybody was putting money in cakes, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. My mother thought that was the most unhygienic thing ever. So whenever she would do it, she would spend many hours wrapping each quarter in a little piece of tin foil. Which I'm told if you hit with your braces is a really unpleasant feeling. Oh, but God bless my mother. So, all right, so we have our middle in and spreading it around so that it completely covers the base, and you do want to try and get it to seal against the edges of your pan, because once this is all firmed up, we are going to cover the whole thing with melty chocolate, and it's nice to have the chocolate on top and not running down the sides in spots. I mean, you know, really at the end of the day, it all tastes good, but just from an aesthetic point of view, it is nice when it stays on top. All right, getting so close. So the thing about our custard powder versus the Bird's custard powder you will get in the store is this isn't quite as yellow. And that's okay. It tastes phenomenal. In fact, I would argue it has more flavor than the custard powder, the Bird's custard powder, but that's just me. I might be a wee bit biased. The other thing about this is you will often see it with different colors in it, and some people will actually put different flavors in it. If you use peanut butter in the middle of it with the custard, it's called a sycamore bar. Oh, no, you use peanut butter and icing sugar, and it's called a sycamore bar. Sycamore is another place in BC. Some people will put mint and then do green, which is a kind of a cool thing to do for St. Patrick's Day. So there we have it completely covered, ready to go back in the fridge, and I'm actually going to put it in the freezer so that it firms up a little quicker while I melt the chocolate. All right, our chocolate is all nice and melty and soft. It's not, I've let it cool down just a wee bit, and it actually went fairly quickly because I didn't do it in a double boiler, and really, in order not to burn your chocolate, you should always do it in a double boiler, but being in a hurry on a Friday afternoon, I just stood here and stirred like a demon. So I'll just pour this over top of my base, or my middle, which has firmed up a lot in the freezer. And because the chocolate is still rather warm, it will melt the butter in the center just enough for the two to bond, but not enough for them to mix together. So now I want to carefully spread this around my pan. Make sure I get all of the yellow covered, get it right to the edge if you can. Spatula works really well, and there you can see you don't want to uncover your yellow center. It needs to be completely covered. That is the magic of a Nanaimo bar. Those 3 super cool layers. So there we go. Awesome. And now, as promised, the big finish. If you have an alternate colored chocolate, in this case I'm going to use a white chocolate, and hopefully no one will have moved the toothpicks on me. Oh well, this will do. I will see if I can. Come on, run. There we go. So I can put some lines of white chocolate across it. You can do swirls if you want. You can do whatever pattern makes you happy. The first time I did this, I tried it with a drizzle spoon, and it just wound up being swirls, which looked really cool, and everybody thought it was really fancy, but it was not what I intended to do. But, you know, with a little creative thinking on your feet, you can turn an oops into a work of art. Tell everybody it's modern. Just trying to get some fairly thick lines in here so that when I run my shtick through it, and I'm sure you've all seen this done before, and you just drag something through it and it will drag the white chocolate through it and make kind of a chevron pattern. There you go. I will put it back in the fridge to cool, and then we can unmold it and cut it up and eat.